The offensive coordinator and the receiver know each other. They know it works. And so to me, this was a layup to improve the Patriots, give themselves a better chance, and I thought they fumbled the ball.
I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for days to just drop the hammer. And I'm not the guy who just drops the hammer to drop the hammer, right? A la some people in Boston on radio. We know who they are. Shout out to them because they've been very successful at what they do. So I've been waiting for this. You can't tell me. You can't tell me in any world that this is not a fail by Bill Belichick. It is 100% surefire, no doubt about it, a fail by Belichick. Let's first look at the contract because I've had some pushback on Twitter, shocker, by some Patriots fans who are trying to justify this decision by doing a lot of mental gymnastics. So let's break this down. First of all, let's look at the deal, Greg, okay? The contract. This was an incredibly reasonable, fair deal. This was market value. If you look at average annual value at the wide receiver position, with this contract, D-Hop is going to slot in at 23rd in the NFL. He's the 23rd highest paid receiver in the league. You can't tell me that DeAndre Hopkins is not good enough to be paid in the top 20, let alone 25 at that position in the league. Number 23. The Patriots, as we know, are bottom of the league in cash spent. We can sit there and play salary cap games all we want. The numbers are the numbers. I believe Andrew Callahan tweeted it out a few days ago. You can check it out. They're at the bottom of the league. So here's some of the pushback that I'm seeing on Twitter, and I'm sure has been said on the airwaves the last few days because I'm yet to be in Boston. I will be there shortly, and I can't wait. Oh, he's breaking down. I got that. He's breaking down, Nick. He's old. He's washed. Number one. 6 of the 8 games that Hopkins missed last year was due to suspension. Now, maybe he gets suspended again, but I would deem that unlikely since he hasn't had that happen to him before. So 6 of the 8 games that he missed last year was not due to injury. It was not due to him breaking down. It was due to a suspension from the league. Then you go back to 2021. I think he missed 7 games in 2021. It was a hamstring issue for a few games. He tried to play through it, and then he tore his MCL. Okay, I will give you 2021. Yes, he had injuries in 2021, like the vast majority of NFL players get at some point in their career. But this is a guy, I keep hearing about the practices, which I have more ammo for as well, but I keep hearing about how this guy doesn't practice. He doesn't want to practice. You know what he does, though? He plays on Sunday. He plays. In the first 8 years of his career, you know how many games this guy missed? In his first 8 years in the league, he missed 2 games. Dose. 1, 2. 2 games missed in his first 8 years. He played every week in his first 8 years, and he did nothing but produce throughout those 8 years. Oh, but Nick, he's washed. He's not that same guy. Okay, let's play a game. Last year, 2022, a lot of people love themselves Jacoby Myers, and I enjoy Jacoby Myers. I do. I think he's a good football player. A lot of Patriots fans wanted Myers to stay in New England, okay? Let's compare the stats of D-Hop and Myers from just last year. I remind you that Hopkins played 9 games while Myers played 14. Did you know that Hopkins had only 3 less catches than Myers did last year in 5 less games? Hopkins had 717 yards. Myers had 804 yards. Myers had 6 touchdowns. D-Hop had 3 touchdowns. So the guy who's breaking down was pretty much exactly what Jacoby Myers was a year ago. Somebody that Patriots fans love and praise and wanted to give the bag to. Would have no issue paying that guy $11, $12 million guaranteed. But you're looking at D-Hop, and in 5 less games, he gave you pretty much the same exact production that Myers gave the Patriots. And you're telling me this guy is washed. He might end up being washed, but there's 0 evidence at this point in time on July 19, 2023, 10:33 Pacific time, that this dude is washed. 0 evidence of that. And if you want to go back and forth and fight about the deal, Greg and I talk about this all the time. The comps, the market value. It takes one team. That's all it takes. I saw some people say, yeah, but Nick, 31 other teams didn't want to pay Hopkins that contract. Well, number one, 31 other teams are not in the situation the Patriots are in. How many teams across the NFL have a legitimate, bona fide number 1 wide receiver? I'll get to that in a minute because there's many. But let's just look at Odell Beckham Jr. Let's just play the game, Greg. Odell Beckham Jr. got $15 million guaranteed from the Ravens. That's a guy who has 67 catches combined in 2020 and 2021. OBJ had 3 more catches the last 2 years he's played combined than D-Hop had last year. Oh, and he missed last year, OBJ, with a torn ACL. And that dude got $15 million guaranteed. You can't tell me in any kind of way with any angle that this D-Hop deal was out of control and it was unfair. This was a fair deal. It comes down to this. Bill Belichick didn't want to pay it. He cheaped out. And let's just call it like it is. Let's embrace that, everybody. It's the Belichick system, which we'll get into in a minute. But you can't sit here and tell me that the contract that Hopkins signed was unfair based on his history, based on his recent productivity, and based on the comparison of OBJ, who just got more money guaranteed than this guy did, and OBJ's played a lot less than he's played over the last couple of years. The deal is fair. And for people telling me he doesn't want to practice, you know what's funny, Greg? People arguing about D-Hop. He's older. Doesn't practice a ton. It's funny how the guy from the outside who has a high ceiling and is considered one of the best receivers in football the last decade, it's funny how people will disparage him and take shots at him for not practicing, not being healthy all the time. But yet it's fine. It's fine when the Patriots are giving money to the Nelson Aguilars of the world. They're giving money to Devontae Parker. They're giving money to everybody else. Are you telling me that any receiver on this roster right now is more dependable than DeAndre Hopkins? Do you think Juju is more dependable than Hopkins? Devontae Parker more dependable? Tyquan Thornton more dependable? Kendrick Bourne more dependable? Are you telling me any of those guys are more dependable than Hopkins? Don't come to me with this noise about how he's not dependable, he won't practice, he's washed, blah, 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 blah. Fact. DeAndre Hopkins, if he signed with the Patriots, would be the best receiver on this football team day one. Fact. Fact. Admit it. Admit it. It's okay if you admit things. It's fine. You'll survive it. You can actually disagree with Bill Belichick from time to time. It's okay. You won't be struck by lightning. You'll wake up tomorrow morning. Everything will be fine. I have a lot more, but any reaction to what I just said?
Yeah. The only thing, before we take a break and then talk more about big picture stuff.
I don't want to take breaks.
Oh, Nikki's in rare form today. I love it. So I was just going to say, the thing that stood out to me is, if the Patriots just would have, if they just would have chosen DeAndre Hopkins and just got rid of Devontae Parker, why has Devontae Parker earned anything around here? Why has he earned any guaranteed money? He's had one healthy season, one really good season in his career. He can't stay on the only thing consistent about his career is he can't stay on the field, which, is ironic considering the criticisms about DeAndre Hopkins and his practice habits, even though the dude is just a gamer and he's out there all the time. And I mean, his numbers last year, like you said, in 9 games, 64 catches in that crap bag of an offense without Kyler Murray. I mean, that's like an all-pro season. That should be celebrated. But, just all you had to do was, if you're worried about the money, which you shouldn't be because it's not yours, it's Robert Kraft's money, he's got plenty of it. If the Patriots just would have released Devontae Parker or traded him for a 6th-round pick, 7th-round pick, they immediately would have recouped his $6 million and put that to DeAndre Hopkins. So Hopkins really would have cost about $9 million,
Yep.
Additional to what they were doing. And DeAndre Hopkins is a way better receiver than Devontae Parker. He demands much more respect. He is much more consistent. He has much more potential. And so it just, that kind of stuff just puzzles me, Nick, about this whole discussion about this, but we know if the Patriots would have won the services for DeAndre Hopkins, Patriots fans would have been going nuts and about, and defending him to the tilt and about how, he's not old and, he just conserves himself. He doesn't practice because he wants to conserve himself and he's really good in the games. And you're absolutely right. The bottom line is this. DeAndre Hopkins would be the best receiver on this team. You put DeAndre Hopkins with a healthy Juju Smith-Schuster with these 2 tight ends, and plus you mix in Kendrick Bourne and Tyquan Thornton and maybe a little bit of Marcus Jones. Now you're talking about an offense that has some potential, that there's a fear factor involved, that you're like, all right, these guys can move the ball. These guys can be pretty good. And now they're just left with the same old, which, as we'll talk about after the break, is par for the course around here.
Yeah, and I do want to talk about Mac Jones and what this does to him and some of the things that has bugged me about the idea of not signing Hopkins in relation to the quarterback. I'll get to that in a minute. We have a lot more to talk about here, trust me. But first, Greg will tell you about FanDuel.
Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
All right, before we get to the Belichick side of this, because, Greg, I'll tell you, I read your article from a couple of days ago. I loved it. I was talking to my buddy Jim Louth the other day on the phone, and I was telling Jim, you got to read this. Greg knocked it out of the park. I thought it was great work. We'll get to that in a minute. But I just want to emphasize something here, and I think this is part of a bigger conversation you and I will have about this roster. But another thing that drives me flipping nuts about just not wanting to sign DeAndre Hopkins. When you look around the NFL, look at what every other team does with a young quarterback. When you have a young quarterback on his rookie deal, that gives you a bunch of leeway and wiggle room to pay for guys on the offensive side to make that quarterback better quicker. And yeah, the Patriots signed Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry a couple of years ago. As we know, that was before Mac, but they put the money into the tight end position. It's because they failed to draft guys. Devin Asiasi flamed out. Dalton Keene, I don't know, did he even touch the field in the regular season? I don't even remember if he played a snap in his Patriots career in the regular season or at any point in a season, preseason. Look at what every other team has done, okay? Quarterback on a rookie deal. And you decided not to supply Mac Jones with a legitimate wide receiver one. That's the argument. The argument is not if they added good players around Mac. The argument is, did you give Mac that bona fide stud at a position that he can lean on? Let's just go through it quickly. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill. Tua Tagovailoa all of a sudden started to be a star, quote-unquote, to some people last year. I wonder why that was. Maybe because they added Tyreek Hill and drafted Jalen Waddle. How about Josh Allen? He wasn't Josh Allen until Stephon Diggs got to town. A guy like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant in San Francisco this last year, helped get them to the NFC Championship game because he had Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Run CMC, and George Kittle. Upper echelon talent. Jalen Hurts was a guy who the Eagles actually wanted to get rid of, and they wanted to bring Russell Wilson in. Instead, they add A.J. Brown, and all of a sudden, along with Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts looks like an absolute beast last year. Dak Prescott, what did Dallas do? They went out, they got C.D. Lamb. Justin Herbert. Go through all the young quarterbacks, and every single one of them gets a bona fide, legitimate, number one wide receiver. Not a guy with ifs, if he stays healthy, if he does this, if he... They go out and they get a dude. And the Patriots have not done that for Mac Jones. They drafted a guy, Greg. You and I have talked about this. We don't think Mac's going to be a top 8 to 10 quarterback in the league. We think he's right around the middle of the pack. 12, 13, 14, whatever you want to say. Doesn't matter if he's the 11th quarterback or the 15th quarterback. What are we doing here? He's somewhere in that range. When you draft a guy like that, kind of like Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, who has who? Oh, Justin Jefferson. And then they just drafted Addison in the last draft here. When you draft a guy like Mac, who is not somebody who's going to say, jump on my back, fellas, and I'm going to rip the football for 45 touchdowns this year. You drafted a guy who needs good to very good talent around him to get the most out of him, including the offensive line. And what you've done is you've surrounded him with a bunch of good pieces who are not dependable, who to a man have proven to be completely unhealthy, and you've given him 2 offensive tackles. One, hopefully, has walked away from the dinner table and has lost some weight at left tackle before we get to our training camp here in a week. And then you went out and brought in a mid-30s right tackle in Riley Reef, who actually, yes, he might be washed. The people that are worried about DeAndre Hopkins being washed, I hope you're really worried about Riley Reef being washed. So you got a left tackle who's had one good year in his career. One good year. For all intents and purposes, Trent Brown's had one good year. You've got a mid-30s right tackle. You've got Calvin Anderson, who Greg said a couple of weeks ago he's watched film's been a turnstile. And you've got the roll call of receivers. None of them, unless you're drinking the Belichick Kool-Aid, none of them do you feel confident or optimistic about walking into this season after the recent history and even the far-reaching history. It is a failure to recognize what kind of quarterback you have and how to get the most out of that guy. And that's troubling to me.